Welcome to the National Center for Biblical Parenting. I'm Scott Turansky. This is Joanne Miller, and we are here to help parents. We love doing the webinars because it gives us an opportunity to take ideas and apply them very specifically to a family while others are listening and then others have opportunities to ask questions. The advantage of that is that every child, we know that every child's different, and some children don't respond to the regular cues that you read about in parenting books. And so having other tools available or other resources or even modifying some of the things, and we've written a lot of books on parenting. We've got video training program and audio CDs you can listen to, and that helps a lot of people. But there's some particular problems where we need to tailor them a little bit more. So that's what we're going to try to do here in this particular area. This is very helpful, I think, in this particular session because we're going to talk about toddlers. Now, we define toddlers as the age between 12 months and 36 months. But we're going to stay on the younger age of that. Preschoolers then are usually between 2.5 to 5 years old. So we're going to stay within the 12 months to 36 month range to try to offer some solutions in this particular webinar. Now, we're dealing with a family. The mom's name is Sarah. Sarah called today because she can't talk, or she's sick and she's got laryngitis or something. And so because of that, I asked her to send me an email that describes her problem. So I'm going to read to you what's going on in Sarah's home first, and then we will go ahead and I'll try to make some responses to this as we go through. I just need to jot down some things here. All right. I'm going to read you the email so you get a flavor, and then later on, if you have some additional issues with toddlers, both either Sarah can type them in because she's with us, or maybe you have some additional issues and you're not the featured parent, but you'd like to ask them, we'll take those as well. But we've got a lot of stuff here we'll try to cover, and I think this will be helpful as we're trying to apply a heart-based approach to parenting all the way down into the toddler years, okay? Sarah says, good to talk to you. Below is an expanded version of my notes of what I wanted to remember to ask you about. Okay, first, my name is Sarah, and then she gives the names of the other people in her family. I'm not going to give those names out here just for privacy purposes, but she has a daughter that's 7.5 months old. She has a husband living at home, and we have a son who is 2, and we're focusing in on the son who's 2 years old. He'll be 2 in December, so I guess, what does that mean? What is it? Now he's in December. Oh, he turned 2 in December. Okay, so he's 2. I'm thinking, man, that's all right, so we're 26 months.
And so those of you who are listening to us after the fact.
That's 27 months.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
All right. We also have 2 dogs and own our own business. So I'm a stay-at-home mom who goes into the office a couple hours once a week, typically with the kids, and does work during naps at night and via email. We truly want to raise obedient children and have been doing growing kids God's way stuff with them both since they were born. However, my 2-year-old is starting to be 2, and I'm not sure how to handle some day-to-day things. I'm not sure what is okay and what is not. I don't want to start bad patterns, and he knows now that I have a little one who needs more attention, and he can get away with more than he used to be able to. He loves his sister, and it's not a jealousy thing, more of a you can't be everywhere thing. I want his heart to do the right thing, even whether I can see him or not. He has just started to use the word no, and I'm not happy about this. I've gotten him to say no thank you, Mommy, but clearly sometimes he truly has to do whatever I ask or tell him to do, i.e. he can not have Cheerios for every meal and tell me no thank you for everything else. How do I get him to eat what I want him to eat? So we got 2 issues there. We got accepting no, or being able to do with the no, and we have now the eating issue. Let's describe the eating issue because we're going to come back and talk about toddlers and eating. Common problem. How do I get him to eat what I want him to eat? I have tried forcing him, waiting him out, and bribing him by saying if you have 2 bites of carrot, you can have a rice cake. Sometimes I know he is still hungry, but he refuses to eat. He won't open his mouth. What I have given him, even if it's something he likes, like strawberries, he will eat half of them and then give me back the rest. He wants something else, and I do not want to make that a habit. He must eat what he is given. As a baby, he ate anything I could puree, and still will. He is just weird about some stuff. I only give him little bits to expand his food very gradually. I know I need to be consistent and do not want meals to be a fight, and do not have time to fight with him over food because I have to feed Victoria as well. Okay, so that's one subject. Let's go to another subject. I'm going to come back and respond to all of these. I need thoughts, she says, on transitioning to a toddler bed. He has a comfortable crib, but my sister-in-law also bought him a race car toddler bed. She gave it to him at Christmas and showed him how to jump in it. Clearly not good. Right now he loves his crib, but I'm fearful he's going to climb out of it any day. He likes to play and jump around after his nap and climb on the edges. I love that he stays in his crib for 3 hours an afternoon and selfishly do not want to lose that. But can you please help me figure out ground rules of the bed and how to implement it? I want him to stay in it till I tell him he can get out or he asks me and I say yes. For a couple of days, I laid on the floor in his room, and every time he stood up in his crib, I told him quietly to lay down. It was night time. And after about 45 minutes, I would leave, and as soon as I did, on my monitor, I could see that he was standing back up. I went back in the first day, and he laid right down when he saw me, but then gave up because it was clearly a game to him and counterproductive. I'm scared of this happening again with toddler beds, so need ground rules to follow and a plan before I am willing to make the transition. Typically, if he does not obey, I will spank him. Tell him to look at mommy's eyes. Tell him what he needs to do. Son, we hold hands in the parking lot, or we eat food, not throw it, and make him practice the correct thing to do once or twice. Problem is, he does not remember and does things over and over again. I feel like I correct him for the same things all day. Two of the things I'm having a hard time with are come here, number one. We tried to make it a game, but now he thinks it's super fun to run away rather than to me, and now I'm chasing him around the house to get his shoes on or get him to let me change his diaper. The second thing that we're having trouble with is holding my hand. Places like parking lot or church or grocery store where I am carrying my daughter and need him to hold my hand when I try to make him, he just sits down and cries. Sometimes I can physically make him do it, but not a habit I want to start. He is a strong little bugger. Please help. Next question. Should I use timeouts? I feel like spanking should not be the only form of punishment. Any thoughts on how to get him not to spit? It's a new thing. His little sister laughs at him, so he just keeps doing it. All right. We've got a lot to talk about here regarding toddlers. And let's do this. Let's talk about, this is just a very, very important period of time in a child's life because the child is developing tendencies of relationships, patterns of how they're handling things. So there's a lot we can do right now in these toddler years to develop good patterns and routines. Children don't have to be taught to resist, to run away, to spit, or to defy parents. They don't have to be taught that those things come normally. They need to be taught routines and patterns that are going to be productive. So we have to do some training here. What I want to do is show you what that training looks like because over time what we're going to do is we're going to build new tendencies in the child's heart. The Bible tells us that Jesus says it's out of the heart that the mouth speaks. There are tendencies that come from the heart that affect behavior. Jesus described it as the fruit of a tree. It comes out of the heart and affects the rest of a person's life. So what we want to do is we want to change the tendencies that your 2-year-old has as you work with him so that he has a tendency to respond when you reach down to hold his hand. He has a tendency to come when you call. He has a tendency to lay down in his bed when it's time to go to sleep. That's what we're trying to develop is these tendencies. So it's going to take some work to develop those, but that's our goal as we're moving forward here with the 2-year-old. We're still using a heart-based approach. We're going to have to use some simpler strategies with 2-year-olds than we might use with 5-year-olds or 10-year-olds or 15-year-olds. They're going to have to be very clear and concrete. Children who are toddlers, they like control. We know that that was partly why we call them what do they call them? Terrible twos or something? They're tough years sometimes because toddlers want to be in control. But the control that they are exhibiting here is very important because it's control that will help them to be able to eat for themselves, to feed themselves, to control their body for potty training. It's control that will give them the ability to make decisions and so on. So we want, the control isn't all bad. I know we wish they'd do exactly what we said, but we're trying to nurture the good side of that control by also teaching them a very important quality in toddlerhood, which is responsiveness to authority. Very important quality. We're not trying to be authoritarian with our as parents, trying to be mean to our kids. We're trying to teach our children that they have to live in a world where there are limits, where there are guidelines, where other people are telling them what to do. It's hard because, see, when in infancy we were emphasizing some different qualities. We're emphasizing trust, the belief that the world's a safe place to be in. So often children who are infants they are the center of their worlds. But as we're moving into the 2-year-old years, the toddler years, then we're teaching them that they are not the center of the universe, that they are a piece and they need to learn cooperation, they need to learn responsiveness to authority. And that is why we're going to change some of these tendencies. Very important that we learn it during these years. If we don't learn it here, it makes it more difficult to learn it later on. So let's go back through some of the things that you're saying in your email. First of all, let's deal with the issue of the fact that you have a second child now. Obviously, when you have a second child, we know that this happens all the time, and often the first child is now 2 when the second child comes along. And so it happens at a time when the child wants control, wants attention, yet is sharing that attention with another person who has entered the family. And so that is very difficult for children sometimes, and we have to do all we can to talk about the family as a unit. We're talking our family, and your sisters, we're working together. You're the big brother now. All of those things I'm sure you're doing already, but we don't want to blame the problem on the little sister. I have to spend time with my sister now, with your sister now. You need to do that. So we're not blaming the problem on the little sister because we don't want to foster these negative feelings and opinions about the little baby. Rather, we want to say things like, look, you're the big brother now. You need to play independently for a little bit, trying to emphasize the child's role in this family dynamic. So I just want to make a statement that you're still going to want to give love and attention to your 2-year-old as much as you're able, but he's going to have to learn how to share that love and attention with the fact that he has a sister on board. So we're going to balance those two things. Giving him attention, though, is helpful because we want him to have those needs met inside of him as well. But he does need to learn how to share that attention now with his sister. Now let's talk about his ability to say no. No, what he's learned to do is to use words to control the situation, and so he's saying no to you. Now, what you want to do is, instead of viewing the no as a form of rebellion, you want to just say to him, wait a minute, wrong response. I need you to say yes. So, I don't even think you want to say no, thank you, mommy. Unless we're asking a question of a child and we want to know the answer, would you like some more milk? And that's an option, then we don't want to know the answer no. So typically, I wouldn't even ask him questions that invite a no answer. I would rather say, are you done? That invites a yes answer. So most of the time, you can rephrase what you're saying so you're never asking for a no answer. You're not expecting it. You're not asking for it. So when you get a no, it's a problem because toddlers need to say yes. That's what they need to say. They say, okay, mommy, or yes. Those are your two choices. Which would you like to say, son? Okay, mommy, or yes? And so what we're saying to him, when he says no, you want to say, oh, wrong response. Try again. Is it yes or okay, mommy? Which one do you want to say? And that's so we're going to move that direction. Now, let's say that he doesn't want to do that. So I'm going to go to your last question about using spanking. You certainly can use spanking with a young child. The harshness or yelling that sometimes take place in the midst of that is what's really damaging to the child, not the spanking itself. Typically, a 2-year-old's wearing diapers, and it's not so much how hard you hit the child. And we're not saying you have to hit him hard to get. It's the firm and the authoritative approach you're using now with your child that says that's the wrong response. That means the most here. So please don't think that it's the pain that's the most important part most of the time. So you can use spanking, but let me just give you another alternative that you can also use because, as you said, spanking can get old really quickly, and some children don't respond too well to spanking, so you need to have other alternatives. And one of those other alternatives is what we would call taking a break. There are several 2-year-old survival skills that you have to develop. This is one of those. When you say to a 2-year-old, you need to take a break, what you're saying is, you can use these exact words. Son, you need to take a break, change your heart, come back and see me when you're ready. So and you might even tell him where. You need to sit by the refrigerator there. You don't send him to his room. A 2-year-old, it's just, that's likely to be too difficult. Unless he's throwing a temper tantrum, then you might scoop him up and put him into the crib and say, you need to settle down, change your heart, and call me when you're ready. And then you can go back in there when he's done. But typically, you want to teach him what a break looks like. And he needs to practice. You can practice it without even any discipline. You can say, son, we're going to have a snack in a minute, but before we do, let's practice the break we've been talking about. Show me that you can take a break. Go sit right over there by the couch. Sit down on the floor. Come back and see me when you're ready. So he goes down there. He doesn't done anything wrong, so he comes back and sees you. Say, great, that was a good way to take a break. We'll keep practicing that today. So we're teaching children how to take a break. It's part of a correction routine. It's not optional. He needs to learn it. So I definitely would use that. Now, let's say that he says no to you. At that point when he says no, then I would typically not try to correct him other than to use words and say, whoop, wrong response. Was that an okay, Mom, or a yes? I'd like to hear a response. And then if he's not responsive at that point, you can move forward with a break in order to help him change his heart. Now, obviously, you're not going to do that in the grocery store or when you got to get out the house in the morning. But over time, we're going to change the patterns. We're going to help him see that we are not moving forward here. Life is stuck for you. You cannot go forward unless you're able to respond the right way. In fact, we're going to practice. So I would encourage you to practice calling his name, and he needs to come. That was one of your other questions, problems you're having. You call him and he runs the other way. And you're not going to get very far in the instruction process if you call your son and he runs the other way. So we've really got to practice this. So Sarah, I would suggest that as you're working with your son, that you're going to practice 20 times the first hour, maybe 100 times the first day, and all you're going to do is say his name. So you're going to call his name Billy, and Billy is going to come to you. And when he comes to you, then you're going to affirm him. Good job. I like the way you're responding to me. That was the right thing. And he never knows why he's coming, because sometimes when you call him, he's going to get snack. Other times when you call him, you're going to go out and play, or you're going out the door, or you're going to just tell him you love him, or you're going to give him an instruction. He never knows why you're calling him, and you're not telling him when you call him. You just call his name, Billy, and he needs to come. So the first day you practice this, you're going to practice it. You say, Billy, when I call your name, you need to come. And if he doesn't come, you go get him and you bring him over. Physically, you pick him up and you bring him over and say, when I call your name, you need to come. Now let's go practice it again. I'm going to put you back down over there by the couch, or maybe you're moving away from the toys, and I'm going to put you over here in the kitchen by the floor in the refrigerator here. When I call your name, you need to come. So think about it, and I'm going to call you in just a minute. And so then very quickly you have to call him, because with 2-year-olds, if you don't move quickly, you lose their attention. You've got to move pretty fast here. So you're going to call his name and practice. And then he comes to you and you say, good job. I like it, Billy. You came to me. That's great. Good. You're learning how to obey. That's great. So go play. I'm going to call you in a little bit. When I call you, come. You never know why I'm going to call you. And then when he comes the next time, you offer him a cookie as a snack, or when he comes the next time, you give him a hug, or whatever it is going to be. You're practicing over and over again, and you're changing the tendencies in his heart by using a relational training exercise we're calling Come When Called. And so you're moving forward like that. So that's going to take some work, and you're going to have to practice that for several days. I remember we adopted our girls, Megan and Elizabeth. They came into our home before they turned 4, so they were 3. They were out of the toddler age. They were in the preschool stage. But we couldn't take them out into public for 6 weeks because we didn't have the relational routines we needed. So they need to learn how to come when called. That's just one of the relational routines. Another relational routine is when you reach down to hold his hand, he needs to hold your hand. It's a great relational routine. You're doing the right thing by holding his hand, and he needs to practice that. So what that means is you're going to have practice sessions. So that means we're going to practice around the house. Son, it's time to practice the holding hand. What do we want to call this something? The holding hand routine, we can call it. We need to practice holding hands. When I reach down to hold your hand, you reach up and hold my hand, and we're going to walk together. And so you're going to practice doing this around that. If he refuses to do it and falls down, you're going to scoop him up and you're going to put him, by the refrigerator, and you're going to say, you need to take a break. Come back and see me. We're going to practice walking together. That's what we have to do. You're 2, you're going to be 3 pretty soon. And when you're in, so this is something we have to learn how to do. You have to learn how to hold my hand. This is not optional. So practice around the house, then practice in the backyard, then practice in the front yard, then practice at the park, then practice in the grocery store. Practice. You don't practice in the grocery store first. That's like the final exam. Otherwise, you're going to have a child who's throwing himself on the floor. So you want to practice over and over again in order to build relational routines. 2-year-olds need relational routines. It helps them move forward. I would ask you if this makes sense, but since you're not talking, then, hold on just a minute.
Sarah is talking. She
good.
says, he does great in house, just in public he falls down. Should I take a break at the grocery store if this occurs?
Great. Thank you for asking that, Sarah. I wanted some feedback here. Okay, I still wouldn't practice in the grocery store yet. I would practice in places where you can easily take a break, like the park or some other place, maybe the library, but maybe that's too loud. I don't know. I mean, it depends how your child responds. But some places where you can go, church sometimes, I would practice in different places and make it part of the routine. So let's say you're at church and you're going to practice this. I would reach down and hold his hand, and if he doesn't respond, you're going to put him into a break right there. In some place, it's not irritating to other people, but or you're going to call his name. And when you call his name, he needs to come. So we're going to work back and forth here to develop this routine with lots of practice. And then you'll be able to take him into the department store or the grocery store. And the answer to your question about whether you can put him in a break in the grocery store depends on whether he's learned the break or not. Eventually, when you've practiced the break and he's responding at home, then you can use the break at church or in the park or wherever else you're at. And then once he's responding well in public, then yes, you're going to use it in the grocery store because it's a big motivator for him to change. What you want to try to avoid is the temper tantrums in the grocery store, obviously. And so you don't want to practice it there. You want to practice a lot at home, and then you'll be able to use it. We would even use these kinds of things, and I recommend this all the time, in a restaurant. The child is playing with the straw and the drink, and you say to him, you need to leave the straw in the cup. If you take the straw out of the cup and you're not obeying me, I'm going to go have you take a break right over there. Now, your child might be shocked at first, but if you've practiced this in other places and you say, okay, you need to go take a break over there, he's sitting down, and then he'll come back to you. And when he comes back to you, you debrief with him and then let him re-enter life. But you're using this break strategy as a tool in order to move him forward. All right, we need to get to bedtimes and meal times here. We got a lot to cover here in your email, so I'm going to move on here. What we're trying to do is build relational routines. And now let's talk about food. Let me say this about food. This is a real hard battle to win. The best tool you have in the eating category is natural consequences. The natural consequence of hunger is a great tool to use with children. And so you have to understand that a 2-year-olds are at different stages. One 2-year-old will be eating a lot of food because he's just in that growth spurt as he's growing. As you know, some 2-year-olds, they reach 20, 25 pounds and they stay there for 6 months, 8 months. They're not moving from that growth point. They're just plateaued. They don't need as much food, and so they're not going to be desiring as much. So you really want to use their hunger as a key motivator to eat. Now, your job, because you want them to eat healthy, you want them to eat carrots and I don't think you mentioned anything else except Cheerios. You don't want him to eat all the time.
Strawberries.
Oh, strawberries. Yes, that's right. That you like him to eat. Okay, so what you want to do is de-emphasize the rule element of meal times. You want meal times to be social experiences that are fun and enjoyable. Use hunger as a motivator, and we only are eating, though, 3 snacks and 3 meals. For a toddler, they usually need to eat often. They're just, metabolism requires that they eat probably 6 times a day. Probably equally amount in each of those. Even the snacks are about the same size as the meals sometimes. But Well, you're going to eat 3 meals and 3 snacks. So you have the 3 snacks are after breakfast, after lunch, and after dinner. So you have all of these 3 snacks eating 6 times. And what you want to do typically for mealtime is you want to provide healthy choices. So you're offering a certain amount of food, you're putting it on the plate, and you're saying, this is what you're having for lunch. And so you're putting out the peas and the sandwich or whatever it is that or carrot sticks in a sandwich, whatever it is that you're putting out there for him. But I'd like give him a quarter of a sandwich, and then if he wants more, then we may provide him with more, and we're giving him some carrots. And so you might say to him, if you want another sandwich, I'll give you another sandwich, but you need to eat your carrots. So it's up to you. You don't have to eat it, but if you want more sandwich, then you can have that. And so he chooses to not eat the carrots. It's not worth it for him. And so you say, fine, next meal's snack time coming up in a little while. So go play. And so maybe he's hungry, maybe he isn't, but you're going to offer a snack at 2:30 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And that snack is going to be something like strawberries, as you said, or some melon, or some carrots and celery, or something, apple slices that you want to offer to him. Or you might offer him a little bit of a small bag of Cheerios too, if you want to add that carb to the what you're already providing him. And then you say to him, I wouldn't give it all to him, but unless you could put a plate of fruit and vegetables out, and he could choose whatever he wants. It's not an unhealthy snack. And if you choose to eat all the strawberries and not eat any carrots, that's reasonable. If that's acceptable to you, then I would do that. Otherwise, I just put a little bit of each down there, and if it works, fine. And then he's eating a healthy snack. Go ahead.
Okay, so Sarah wants to know, so when he asks for a snack, not at snack time, just reinforces that he did not want to eat earlier,
yeah,
you have to wait.
Yeah, you just, at this point, see, he's 2. He's not an infant. At infants, we would recommend you feed on demand because of their metabolism, and we're also teaching them something different. In infancy, we're teaching children that the world is a safe place to be in and that you can trust. So when you cry out, your needs are met. We're teaching something very different. In toddlerhood, we're teaching children that they have to fit into the schedule of other people, and we're going to eat on a schedule, we're going to sleep on a schedule. That's different than in infancy. So we're making a parenting shift. So that's where we are now. And if your son doesn't want to eat at the snack, then we say, are you sure you don't want to eat? Because the next meal is dinner time, and that's in a couple of hours. Think about it. It's okay. If you don't want to eat, that's fine. So you're using the natural consequence for him, and over time, he's going to make choices, and he's going to miss out on a snack, and he's going to be hungry. It's surprising, though, how many kids can go pretty long without eating. And that's okay, just because of their growth at that point doesn't require it. But then at mealtime, we're going to offer some healthy choices. So I would encourage you, probably not when he's 2, to serve family style, where you have all the bowls and so he can take a huge mound of potatoes and no vegetables or something, because you're trying to get him to balance those things. So you serve him a little bit of each thing, and then you're going to say to him, you can choose. And we're not saying anything. We're saying, okay, let's pray. We're going to eat, enjoy your food, and let's talk about the fun things of our day, and let's laugh, and let's talk about some funny things that happened today, and some riddles or whatever we're going to do. Riddles are for older kids, not 2-year-olds. But we're just having a fun time with mealtime, and he says he wants to be done. We say, are you sure you want to be done? Because the next meal we have a snack coming up later. So that snack after dinner isn't going to be probably ice cream and cookies. It's going to be more healthy stuff, like some more fruit or vegetables. For a period of time, you're going to offer only healthy alternatives for him, because he's in a habit of resisting your food choices. Now, we don't have to do this with children who are eating like crazy. So you'll go through a stage when he, probably shortly, maybe in the next 6 to 12 months, he's going to enter a stage where he's going to be eating like crazy, and you'll be surprised how much he eats, and you're going to say, okay, well, we can have a snack of ice cream and cookies if we want. That's reasonable too. But we're going to make a shift in that regard depending on how they're doing in the eating department. So if you have a child who's having trouble eating, it's likely not wise to force feed them or discipline them for not eating, or try to wait it out. And it's not that important. Food is not that important in the course of our lives. We sometimes make a bigger deal out of the food, but the most important part of the mealtime is the social part. So just keep that in mind. Use natural consequences. I just need to make one caveat. If a child's under the growth curve, there are children who have some significant health issues that cause them to not be on the growth chart within the normal range, and those children may have some eating issues, and because of that, we may take a different approach. But I'm not talking about that particular child who is a challenge. We're talking about the child who we're trying to just use natural consequences to eat, and they're in the normal growth curve. They're being picky about their eating. And I don't think we have to be so interested in making sure our kids eat carrots or green beans or whatever. They may prefer certain foods, and that's okay. And so we don't have to force them to do certain things. We're just offering them healthy alternatives. So if they don't want to eat green beans, they're eating carrots or something else, as opposed to eating cereal or some other choice that may not be as productive for them. All right, I'm going to go on, Sarah, just for the sake of time, and talk about your bedtime issue. Transitioning to a toddler bed is a very important time in a child's life. And I want to show you how to do this to make this work, because the tendency, we have to teach the child, the tendency is for the child we want them to stay in the bed, not to get out of bed until whatever. Okay, but we're going to have a number of things we're going to wrestle against here. When the child's in a toddler bed, the child can get out of bed, the child can come and find you, which may be out in the living room where you are resting, reading a book or something. The child may come into your bedroom where you're sleeping. And so we have to address this whole issue. Let's start because there's two main issues when it comes to bedtime. One is getting the kid into bed and asleep. The other is what happens when they wake up in the middle of the night and need you to put them back to bed. Those are two different issues. Let's just try to talk about the first one. It's great that you have a toddler bed. At some point, you're going to want to move there. I would suggest that now's probably a good time, but I would do it this way. I would say to him, we'll call him Billy again, just for privacy's sake. I would say, Billy, look, we have a special bed here, and I'm going to let you sleep in that bed if you can do it the right way. I think you're old enough, or do you think you're old enough? I'll know you're old enough if you can do these things. One, lay down in bed, don't get up. Okay? We're not going to be bouncing around in bed. When you lay down in bed, it's time to go to sleep. All right? Number two, we're not going to get up and come out of bed. When you're in bed, you need to stay there. Can you do the right thing, Billy? And he says yes, because he wants to try to do this. So we're going to move forward with him. And we're going to say, look, I'll let you sleep in the toddler bed if you're doing the right thing. If not, I'm putting you back in the crib. So now you're in that stage, see, where he's not crawling out of the crib yet, where you can use the crib as the alternative if he's not handling the toddler bed well. So that's the first thing. We're going to get him in the toddler bed. But when you put him to bed at night, you want to tuck him in, sing to him, pray with him, kiss him, whatever you guys do at bedtime, rub his back. I would even, try to put him to sleep. I wouldn't lay down with him typically, but you might make that bedtime a special time with some affection if he appreciates that. But then when it's time for him to go to bed, and if he's not asleep, if you're going to train him to stay in that toddler bed, or even you're trying to do the same thing in the crib, you can do it either way. You want to go sit at the doorway, and you're going to say, here's the thing, you only get one sentence. You got to remember this. No dialogue here. We're not giving reasons. We're not talking about tomorrow. We're not threatening. We're not bribing. We're not doing anything. You only get one sentence, and that sentence is this. It's time for bed. You need to lie down. We're not even saying you have to go to sleep. You can't force someone to go to sleep. But you can say you need to lie down. It's time for bed, you need to lie down. Now let's say we're in the toddler bed, or it can be either bed, okay? You're trying to train him to do this, and you've already done this to a significant level here, as you've described in your email. But I would suggest that here's what's happened. Let's say he's in his toddler bed, you tuck him in, he's got the blanket on top of him, he's going to sleep, and then you go sit in the hallway, or you're sitting in the doorway where he can see you. And as soon as he sits up, you're going to go over there and you're going to say, it's time for bed, you need to lie down. You're either going to say it or you're going to go over there and put him down. And you're going to do that over and over again for 45 minutes or an hour and a half or 2 hours or however long it takes until he falls asleep the first night. And we're going to do that every night, and we're going to train him. No relation. You're not going to give him any words. We're not going to give him any relationship, even negative kind of things. We're just going to be firm, and we're going to say, You need to lie down. It's time. It's bedtime. You need to lie down. Over and over again. That's what we're going to say. And we're going to keep moving that direction.
Scott, Sarah's just asking, do you want him to see her?
Yeah. I want him to see you. Well, typically, yes. I want him to know that you're right there watching him and that he needs to lie down. Typically, you're not going to need to spank him. I suppose you could if you feel like that's helpful, but generally speaking, just the firmness of putting him back down in the bed over and over again and being firm with him is going to train him the tendencies that he has. So stay with him for that period of time. It's going to take some time. Obviously, you can't put him to bed during commercials. You've got to be in there for a while. And I take a book and read it in the hall where he can see you for a while. And then after a while, after he's got the plan down, then you're going to move outside the hall where you can hear him, or you're using your baby monitor or whatever, and he can't see you, but you're very quick. This is the thing. You want to be very quick to act as soon as he sits up. So he starts to move around. You're right in there saying, you need to lie down. You need to lie down. No, nobody's angry. Nobody's yelling. You need to lie down. And so you're just being firm with him. It's bedtime. You need to lie down. And we're doing that over and over again to see some change take place, change the tendencies. Let's just go to the waking up. You didn't ask this question, but I'm going to try to answer it anyway, because there are times when he's in a toddler bed. See, now he can get up and he can come find you. And so you may wake up with him right next to your bed, or you might wake up with him in your bed. Now, how you handle this depends on what you want to do with this, okay? We don't think it's wrong for children to sleep in their parents' beds. If that's what you want to do and have its family bed experience and the cuddling and the warmth that takes place in the relationship building time, that's fine. We don't have a question about that or a problem with that. But if you don't want to do that, and that's fine too, then as soon as you realize that he's in the room, in your bed, on the floor next to you, standing next to your bed, whatever it is, you want to get up and go put him back to his bed, maybe not saying anything, just take him back in there. And you're going to do that regularly so he realizes that that the solution is he needs to go back to his own bed, not come into your bed if you're trying to train him not to come into your bed. What we're teaching him to do is when he wakes up at night, put himself back to sleep himself. The older he gets, when he's 3 years old, certainly you're going to be able to talk to him about this, and you're going to say, you know, I wake up in the night too. As a mom, I wake up at night, but I put myself back to sleep. And that's what you need to do too. You put yourself back to sleep. You close your eyes and you count your breaths, or however you want to do it. That's what you need to do in order to go to sleep. Well, maybe at 3 years old he can't count his breaths because he's only 3. I'm talking about an older child, but you need to think happy thoughts, or you just need to lie there still and don't move, and you'll fall back asleep. Put yourself to sleep in order to make that work. So there are times at night when kids need some attention, and we give that to them. And we love them, I think, at night by putting them back to sleep and helping them get back in their beds. And when we do that, we're teaching them a tendency that when you get up at night, you're going back to bed. And eventually they'll learn to put themselves back to sleep themselves in order to move that forward. Okay, here's what I want to do. I want to open up the phone lines, or at least allow other people to ask questions. So if you have a question, if you would, you can use the feature at the bottom of the web software to raise your hand by clicking on the little hand, and then we'll know you want to ask a question. So if you do that, then we'll unmute you so that you can ask us a question. Or if you want to type a question into the chat box, then you can do that as well. I know that some of you are on the phone. I'm hesitant to unmute all the lines of the phone because some of you are washing dishes and listening to this, or some of you have kids with you and you're playing with those kids, and the kids, you're just listening being muted, and it works for you. If I open all the phone lines, then we got everybody and all their kids and everything, dogs barking and all kinds of things. So I'm hesitant to do that, but if you have a question, you can go ahead and raise your hand or type something in the chat.
Scott, Wanda has a question.
Okay.
So Wanda, I'm going to unmute you.
Wanda, go for it.
Hi. My little Lukey is a little over 36 months. He's about 3.5 years old.
Okay.
And the eating thing, that was great. But I'm assuming I would use the same procedures for him, even though he's older than 2.
I would agree, yes.
Because he only wants to drink milk. He nibbles on food or snacks. So
okay.
I just wanted to make that one, wanted to know if there was just anything different.
No, no, that's what you're doing. I think that milk obviously is a good food for a child because it provides the nutrition, it provides the calcium that a child needs, and it provides the protein that's there. But you want to be careful to limit the liquids for a child, especially if you're doing potty training. So you want to just be careful with all of that stuff in order to make it work. You want to have them eating some solid foods as well because that'll help them to move forward. So if you're not giving him milk can be rather filling food, and so
Yeah.
by giving him water instead, he may be more inclined to eat some of the solid foods that are healthy for him as well.
Yeah. No, I've just been really bad about that with him. I have not been consistent on that because of our family dynamic. My husband's had a couple shoulder surgeries, so
Yeah.
he's been home for the last 9 months, which has really changed our family dynamic with
Sure.
him being here all the time.
Yep.
Most importantly, though, in the area of television. I homeschooled Anthony before he went to first grade this first year, my
Okay.
older son.
Yes.
And, there was no television. We read, we played, we did tons of stuff. And once in a while, if they wanted a program, we would put it on for them. But my husband, I guess, I have to train. I kept telling him, I need to train my little guy to play by himself now. His brother's not here. He needs to learn to play by himself, to not always needing mommy all the time. Or, but he's basically said, if he wants to watch television, he's going to watch television. So Luke knows if Daddy's in the house, he goes to Daddy, and I don't know how to handle that.
Are you saying that your husband's not cooperative with you, or are you saying that?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so that's a different issue. Okay, now we're talking about a difference between you and your husband about how we're parenting, because your husband wants to allow him to watch TV. Is that correct?
Yeah, anytime, pretty much anytime,
Okay.
and as long as he's not screaming, basically.
All right. So I would just suggest that having a young child watch a lot of TV is probably not best for their development because it's a passive way of learning, and sometimes the things you're learning aren't the best. When especially children who are preschoolers, as your son is, need to learn through activity, manipulation, and play rather than by watching. And so they develop skills like self-confidence, they develop courage, they develop problem-solving skills, all of those things that are so important for intelligence development take place through play, not through watching TV. So I would highly recommend not watching TV. So that would be my preference.
Yeah.
And that's
No,
your
that is-
preference too, right? Okay, so
Absolutely.
you want to do everything you can to try to persuade your husband to try to make some changes in this area. He probably benefits because there's some cuddling that takes place and there's some relational benefit with his dad during the TV watching time. And so some of
No,
that.
he doesn't sit with him to watch television.
Okay, so it seems to me to be an unwise thing to do. So if your husband's not cooperating in this, then I would try to persuade your husband any way you can. So that's always where we start to try to get on the same page. If that's not working, then you want to persuade your son to be out of that room and set up a different room for your son, maybe. That becomes the playroom, which isn't in the same area where the TV is, because the TV is a very alluring box that is very hard for a child to resist the temptation. So we need to be out of sight and earshot of that TV in order to enjoy it. So I want to put toys in that other room that are attractive for this child to try to encourage that child to play in the other room. And then anything you can do, if your husband will allow you to set some limits on your 3-year-old to get him out of there, that would be really helpful. So that he's learning, some things in some other ways. So you're going to work on that, and then you're going to have to pray for healing for your husband so that he can get back to work. So
Yeah, no, yes, definitely. No, hopefully within this week or so. Because my thing is, I just wanted to, how do I handle, I wanted to know, how do I handle Luke? Because I put the puzzles and the toys, and honey, let's do the Play-Doh and the painting. No,
Yeah.
I want to watch a program.
yeah, it's
And I'm like, no, and the minute my husband hears him defy that, he'll say, just let him watch a program.
yeah. Well, and see, it's a lot easier to watch TV than it is to play. Play
Mhm.
is the work of children, and play teaches children so many valuable things. So I do whatever you can to pull him out of there and try to develop some ability for him to play independently, maybe even with you. Do whatever you can to make that work. And certainly, when your husband has the freedom to go back to work, then you're going to leave the TV off, and your son's going to be forced. Just like we talked about the natural consequence of not eating is hunger, the natural consequence of just having spare time around or boredom is this desire to do something, and so children start finding things to do. So we can help them move ahead in that regard. Maybe somebody else have a question that they'd like to ask about 2-year-olds.
Scott Christie has a question.
Okay, Christy, you're on. What you got?
This is not necessarily for my kids, but my niece. She's 18 months, and anytime that we're with her, she doesn't show any like affection, like no hugs or kisses. Like she wants her own space, and when I'm with her, I try to work with her with that, but I don't really know what I'm doing because I don't want to make her. But do you have any suggestions on that?
And why is
Obviously,
okay, let me ask you a question. Is this 18-month-old child the natural born child of these two parents that this child lives with?
yes.
Okay. And is the lack of desire for affection caused by any kind of trauma or early problem in this child's life?
No.
Okay, so it may simply be that this child doesn't use affection as the means of communicating love. And there are some children, most children, I would say, gravitate toward this affection, touchy-feely kind of response. But some children don't like to be toucwant for whatever reason. Their skin is sensitive, or that's just not their way of expressing love or receiving love. And so we want to look for other ways to do that. So just because we want to show love or we want to receive love doesn't mean we have to do it with affection. So I wouldn't see that necessarily as abnormal. I would just see it as different. And so we may enjoy a relationship with this child by giggling, laughing, reading a book together, talking together, walking together, exploring together. Those may be the opportunities that bring closeness. Usually, what we're trying to work on here is the whole bonding experience between parent and child, usually established pretty well in infancy and developed more in toddlerhood. So all of that is very important at this age, but bonding doesn't always have to take place through touch. Most of the time it does, but it doesn't always take place that way. And the reason I asked you questions earlier is because children who are adopted, for example, often have reactive attachment disorder, which is an inability to connect emotionally, or they have other issues that prevent them from connecting in the same way. Maybe they had a abusive mother, or maybe their mother neglected them or something, and so they have bad feelings toward a female caretaker, and so that makes it difficult. So that's why I ask those questions. It means that we need to work harder in order for the bonding experience to take place. We even do it in those situations, but in your case, that's not the situation. So it leads me to believe that this child just has different ways of expressing love, and we want to identify what those are. And it may be sitting next to this child, or it may be reading a book, or laughing together, or something along that line. Does that make sense, Christy?
Yes. Thank you.
Sure. Do we have time for maybe one more question before I summarize here? If someone has an additional question. Okay, let me do this. Let me summarize where we've come here, and then maybe point you to some more resources that we have at the National Center for Biblical Parenting. We're talking about toddlers. We're talking about making parenting shifts. We make a significant parenting shift between infancy and toddlerhood. That shift is a shift between teaching an infant about trust and the belief that the world is a safe place to be in, to teaching things like responsiveness to authority and cooperation and self-control. So those are very important qualities a child needs to learn. We're moving that direction as we're helping children to grow and develop in the toddler years. We're going to do that in a number of different ways. One of the challenges we see that 2-year-olds are developing this ability to control their world. Their ability to control is good because it enables them then to be able to control their body in potty training and eat, feed themselves, dress themselves, those kinds of things that are very important skills that we want them to learn. But it also spreads very quickly to controlling parents and telling them no or doing other things like that. So we want to be able to divide the good kind of control from the bad kind of control by teaching them responsiveness to authority. That's primarily going to come not through correction. It's going to come through practice of doing the right thing and training children with relational routines. We're building tendencies in the child's heart to move in the right direction. So in toddlerhood, we want our children to understand that they do need to give up their agenda for someone else. They do need to learn how to cooperate and respond to someone else. When we do that, then we start seeing significant change take place. At the National Center for Biblical Parenting, we have a CD set called Parenting Toddlers. Is that right?
Yes.
Very original title. Anyway, it amplifies some of these ideas a little bit more. It was a live presentation we did for parents of toddlers and went through a number of different things regarding toddlers, some of which we haven't talked about here, like potty training and so on, that you may want to listen to for further reference. Also, I would encourage you to take a look at the book Home Improvement, the parenting book you can read to your kids. You're probably not going to read it to your toddler, but you certainly will start implementing these basic strategies early in your toddler's experience. So you want to use these 8 different strategies in family life out of the Home Improvement book in order to move you forward. We want you to know that we are, because you've been in this webinar, we're going to send you a thank you and an evaluation. We'd appreciate your feedback. We'd like to know about your experience in this webinar. And as a thanks for returning that to us, we will send you a discount coupon that you can use for your use in our web store. So we are very interested in equipping you with parenting resources, so please take advantage of that in our web store as our gift to you for your response. If you're looking for more resources, I'd encourage you to look at the resources at biblicalparenting.org. We've got a bunch of them. And in fact, just click on the toddler section if that's the age you're looking at, or the preschool section, and you'll find resources designed just for those children there. A number of them, many of them we've written ourselves, or CD sets that we have, or MP3s you can download. All those things that will be available to you. So thank you very much for being on this webinar. We're very grateful that you've been with us and that we've had a privilege to talk with you about this particular age group. If you have an idea about a webinar that you'd like to share with us, please let us know. We're eager to set up new webinars, and we have space available next month if you'd like to be a featured parent regarding another specific area in family life. Thank you very much, and may God bless you.